and welcome back to another episode of More Than You Think. Yes, this is a podcast, as you might have already guessed, but it's also very political. Ooh, we're gonna get political. We always get political, but if this is your first time listening, then welcome. This is a podcast about how political, economic, and social events are intertwined with pop culture, music, movies, entertainment, all of that. And today, as I said last episode, we are going to talk about female beauty standards and how everyone is super skinny. All the girls are skinny again. Well, not all of them, but Slim Thick is losing its power. We're losing our power. I'm just kidding. I'm not. But women in Hollywood are getting scarily thin, and it's apparently misogynist or something to point it out. So a few examples of this that I've seen recently are Emma Stone, Lily Collins, Maude Apatow, Demi Moore, and Kaya Gerber. Now, I know what you're thinking. Girl, Kaya Gerber's always been skinny. Yeah, she's always been skinny. She's a model. She's the daughter of Cindy Crawford. Cindy Crawford is obviously also skinny. And these people are naturally thin, right? But then you see her show up on the Oscars red carpet half the size she was before. And when you're naturally thin, you can eat and you'll still be thin, but you don't look unhealthy. Like, for example, someone that comes to mind is Zendaya. She's obviously naturally thin, but you can't see all of her bones and you cannot almost see the veins. And her, she looks nourished. She looks like she's glowing, she's healthy, she looks happy. And with Kaya Gerber, as beautiful as she is, because it's not okay to call someone ugly because of these things are so okay. She doesn't look healthy. And it's same thing with a lot of these other people that I named. They just look like they are starving themselves. And the same thing always happens when you see a woman who is like rapidly losing weight and you start to see all of her bones that you know that like anatomically, like biologically, you're not supposed to be seeing those bones, right? You see these women and you say, okay, that doesn't look right. That looks unhealthy. And then people reply to you in comments and they're like, don't talk about women's bodies. Stop talking about women's bodies. Let me tell you something right now. Women's bodies need to be talked about more, but not by men. That's the problem. All the women that I named, none of them were fat. None of them were ever fat, probably in their whole lives. And then they show up to these red carpets like 1% body fat, right? Like I said, you can see bones that you know that it's not okay for you to be seeing. Like if you can see those bones, that person needs to go to the hospital, right? Like if you look like you could lose to Eugenia Cooney in a fight, you need to go to the hospital. And like, for example, there was like this recent clip of Margot Robbie going around on Twitter that I saw, and people were like retweeting, quoting, being like, why does she look skinnier? Like, why would she need to lose weight? And sometimes, things go on behind the scenes that we don't know, and that's fine. But the thing is that it's being glamorized. It's being like shown as like the standard, like that's what everyone should look like. But that's not the case. Like, we do need to eat food, ladies. Like, do eat a chicken nugget. A chicken nugget every now and then is okay. What else? A steak here and there? Well, yes. And a lot of what you see is like these women, they show up with their cheeks sunken into their faces on purpose, because that's like the beauty standard. It's like you need to get rid of, what is it called? Buccal fat? I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's like buccal fat removal. And it's like, okay, your cheeks need to look like sharp. It's like, honey, why are we all trying to achieve the Cillian Murphy face? He was born that way. There's nothing we can do. Like, what are we going to do? And of course, we all know what went down with the cast of Wicked and the amount of videos that I saw of people saying that they couldn't even enjoy the movie because they could see all of Ariana Grande's bones. It was a lot of video. There was a lot of people talking about it. When that happens and society is recognizing it, you know that something's wrong. But what was good that came out of that whole thing was that people were questioning it. Like before, like back in the early 2000s, she would have shown up to that Wicked premiere, skin and bones, and the fans would have said, she looks amazing, she looks great, she looks healthy. Now, in 2026, 2025, the whole Wicked thing happened, and everyone was like, that's not good, that's not right, she doesn't look okay, we're worried about her. And of course, you get the odd person here and there saying, don't talk about women's bodies, you don't know what she's going through. But when you say that, and when you dismiss the fact that a woman looks unhealthy and that she's obviously trying to fit some sort of beauty standard that is unhealthy, you are perpetuating those unhealthy beauty standards. You're encouraging people to starve themselves and kill themselves in order to look pretty, to fit a standard that was not created by women for women. It was created by men for men. In recent sort of appearances or whatever, she hasn't been out that much, but Ariana Grande, as soon as the Wicked whole thing ended, I think she went to some award show, it was the Golden Globes, and she already started looking like she was healthier, like a healthier weight, like immediately. It might have been makeup, it might have been hair, whatever, but I really hope that she's recovering, because we cannot lose Ariana. We cannot lose Ariana. She's too precious. She's too precious. And that voice, that music, it's like supernatural. It's taking over me. Well, yes, we need that. We need her. Now, again, whenever someone comes out against a surprising weight loss, the classic, let's not talk about women's bodies. It's either that or you're jealous. You wish that you were that skinny, you fatty. And you know what? I actually am skinny. So first of all, you can kiss my butt. Whoa. And second of all, saying that we shouldn't talk about women's bodies is cowardly, because conversations about women's bodies and women's health need to be had. Women's health is a mystery, and there are so many conditions that happen to women that we just have to endure, because there hasn't been any effort put into understanding how our bodies work and how our health works and how we're actually supposed to be. For example, tell me why I had a friend recently, and she told me that she has no idea when her periods are going to come, and most days she feels like she's going to pass out at any moment, and her doctors just spam birth control prescriptions for that poor girl, which, by the way, birth control is linked to various forms of cancer, yes, according to cancer.gov. So when she tells the doctor, I don't think that this one's helping, they say, okay, well, let's switch to a new one. Honey, I don't think it's working. But that's all that they know. That's all that they can give her. And tell me why there's no resolution for girls like me who bleed nearly to death every month and then feel like passing out every now and then they go to the doctor and get told there's nothing wrong with them, because they get their blood tested, they get everything else tested, all the vitamins seem fine, all the minerals seem fine, everything seems fine, all the levels. And it's like, okay, there's obviously something wrong with me. People don't just feel like passing out on a random Saturday evening at the store. And tell me why we are just now in 2026 finding out that a man's health, has an effect on the mother's pregnancy. The father's health has an effect on how healthy the mother's pregnancy is. Could it be because nobody gave a crap that women were suffering throughout their pregnancies? Could it be that men were dominating the medical field and not actually caring about women's health? Could it be that we are just now women taking over the medical field and starting to do research on ourselves? Tell me why the lack of research on how pharmaceuticals affect women causes medications to produce adverse effects on women at twice the rate they do in men. What? And tell me why from 1977 to 1968, women were excluded from clinical trials by law unless they had life-threatening conditions. And then not until 1933 did Congress pass a law requiring the inclusion of women in clinical trials, presumably because we were being left out. So yes, women were not only refused the opportunity to receive life-saving care, but for those years, no medical treatments were tested on women. And as recently as 2019, women only still account for 40% of participants. So pharmaceuticals aren't being tested on women at the same rate they are being tested on men. So the effects that they have on women are not being observed the way they are in men. And then, of course, there's medical bias that affects women of color more than it does white women. And female-specific conditions make up for 5% of biopharmaceutical research spending, only 1% of which goes to non-cancer-related issues. Like, for example, endometriosis, which affects 1 in 10 women, but studies are being done on how it affects men. Mind you, men cannot get endometriosis. It goes severely underdiagnosed in women because of the lack of research and understanding of the female body. So we don't even know how it affects women, but we are trying to figure out how it affects men. Men who have relationships with women with endometriosis, we want to know how it affects them. What? The conversation about women's bodies always circles back to men, and that is why women need to talk about women's bodies. Because guess what's going to happen if we don't? If we stop talking about women's bodies, if we stop talking about women's health, who do you think is going to talk about it? Because men love to talk about women's bodies, but not in the context of health. No one is going to care about women's health if women don't. That is my point here, okay? And no, it is not okay to shame anyone for the way their body looks, because eating disorders are a psychological disease. It is not okay to disease shame people, but it is okay and it is necessary to raise concern. Especially when you start to see it trending, when you start to see multiple women who work in the same industry who are already slim to begin with, half the size that they used to be in such a short amount of time. So women need to lead the conversation about women's health. And I'll start by saying this. Patriarchy perpetuates eating disorders because men see women as objects to shape, to mold for their consumption. They like when our bodies are docile and malleable for their consumption. Men also love to perpetuate this idea of femininity being synonymous with weakness, fragility, silence, and smallness, right? So of course they want our bodies to match. They want us to be thin. They want us to be fragile, weak. They want us to be barely able to think because they like power for some reason. I don't know what is going on with that gender. I really don't, and I don't like it. And I don't like men. Yes, okay, I saw Jacob Elordi at the Oscars too, and I took a look. I took a second look. I took a third. Yes, of course I did that. Are you serious? But as a whole, I don't like that gender very much. I think they're kind of weird. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. You guys make me uncomfortable. But yes, thinness is a cultural standard, especially in European and Asian cultures. Lighter skin type cultures is what I mean. I know this because I'm half Hispanic, and girl, let me tell you, down south America, if you're skinny, that ain't good. It's girl, eat some soup. That's what my mom always says. She's kind of a judgmental person, but when she sees someone who's a little too skinny, she's like, dang, that girl needs some soup. She has no muscle. And it's some of these people you see, you can tell that they have lost all muscle mass on their body, which by the way is unhealthy. That's another issue. No shade to my mom. It's not okay to talk about it in a judgmental way. It needs to be a judgment-free sort of space, because the more judgmental you are about people, the less likely they will be to listen to you and take your help. So, you have to approach with love and with concern, genuine concern, okay? But since men don't care about our health, they don't care about how unhealthy it is for us to undergo such drastic weight loss. And then, of course, there is a theory out there that I've seen a lot of women talk about online, that they say men want women to look skinny and fragile because that makes us resemble young girls. And it's all rooted in Epstein type mindset. You know what I mean? Diddy type mindset. You know what I mean? Dan Schneider type mindset. If you catch my drift. If you're catching my drift. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word. Did I say it last? I feel like I said. And here's one more thing that I want to add. No shade. Well, actually, you know what? Full shade. Full shade to Leonardo DiCaprio. Because I saw everyone after the Oscars talking about, wait, Leonardo DiCaprio looks hot again. With that mustache? Did you see him raising his eyebrows? Honey, that man does not look good. I don't know what everyone's talking about. It's yes, for a while, everyone was making fun of him, being he just keeps getting wider and wider and no one's doing anything about it. And he looks a little less wide facially recently. But it's not they were all like, young Leo is back, 90s. No. Why is there no bar for men? Like, the bar is underground. What's going on? It's like women have to be 3 pounds, and Leonardo DiCaprio starts looking like he stopped drinking, and now everyone is like, oh, okay, good. What? Are we okay? And wasn't he in the like, anyways, my point here is that we need to stop letting men tell us how to shape our bodies. The end. Yay! And I put a whole bunch of evidence. I have sources that are going to be linked, so you can check those. Like, just vote. I already know I'm gonna be out. But that is today's episode. That's all for today. And I think that the most important thing that we all need to be doing is just remembering that men don't care if we're healthy or not. Yay! Okay. But that is today's episode. I hope that you learned a little something. I hope that you felt a little something. And I hope that you can take away a little something from this episode. Until next time, I have been Valerie. I will continue to be Valerie. And you will hear me next time on More Than You Think. Thank you for listening. I love you. Bye.